I love great conversations. Hi, my name is Angel Jones. Thank you for joining me on 12-Minute Convos, where I help you create a brand of your own unique real self. Listen in as I have conversations with amazing people from all over the world. Good night, Jayne Morgan. How are you going on this wonderful, beautiful night?
Well, it's 11 o'clock in the morning for me, actually. I'm in South Africa. I'm in the Eastern Cape in a little town called Grahamstown in South Africa. We're quite rural here. And it is an absolutely beautiful morning in spring. So I'm very well, thank you for asking.
You are welcome. So it's a great pleasure to have you. One of the things I love is the art of art, right? So, we jumped on here a couple of minutes ago and the conversation was sweet. And then I realized I didn't hit the record button.
You didn't have to admit that, Nobody would have known. Only you and I would have known if you didn't.
Yeah, you're correct. But now they know. They all know.
Yes, like, no, it's good. Authentic. We've got to be authentic.
Yeah, we make errors, right? Yeah,
we do.
It does. So get out there and do what you need to do because errors are part of it.
Yes.
It's part of the art, right? Which brings us to your talent. Which of your talent, Jayne, is responsible for us meeting?
Well, I feel a bit self-conscious about describing anything that I do as a talent, but I suppose it is my work in audio, in trying to create audio for people that they love, and telling stories using audio and being as creative as possible with sound and making podcasts, which is what I do for a living, increasingly so. I actually started trying to make a living making podcasts about 10 years ago, and nobody knew what I was talking about. It's the first and only time in my life I've ever been ahead of the curve. But I'm a radio producer by training, and I suddenly realized in 2006 that there was actually this thing out there called a podcast, and I could really stretch my wings because I love editing and mixing sound to tell stories. That's my passion. So it seemed to me that this was a good place to do it. And 10 years later, it's just beginning to, in South Africa anyway, I mean, obviously in the rest of the world, it's become much more of a thing, but that is now happening here too. So 10 years later, I'm starting to do more and more podcast content production here in South Africa.
That's great. There are a few people that came on from South Africa, and for international podcasting, there were two guys that I saw on speaking about what's happening there. Of course, the medium for communication and distribution is a bit different. Like WhatsApp seems to be huge there, right? It's fascinating. But who did you learn this from, though? Like the skill, and you were speaking about what you were. No, I read this. My apologies. You had to train producers, right? Which is
yes. Well. I mean, as I said, I'm a radio producer by training. I started working for BBC Radio 4 about 1 million years ago. At some point later on, I'm going to have to give away how old I am, but right now I'm not going to do it yet. And actually, I grew up listening to Radio 4, and I think in terms of where did I learn my appreciation of audio from, I have to say, was probably from those programs that I used to listen to when I was a kid. And then I was so very, very excited and privileged to go and work for the station. And then I discovered that I not only loved messing about with sound, it was tape in those days, this is how old I am. I actually learned to edit using 1/4-inch tape and a razor blade and a little Chinagraph pencil and a sticky tape. And you tell people that now, they look at you as though you're completely mad. And I mean, I'm really not that old. It's not that long ago that we were doing this. And so, I mean, what we can do now with digital technology is absolutely extraordinary. So I learned it, I think, from there, from being a radio producer and making documentaries and features and that kind of thing. But actually, I'm still learning. Of course, we're all still learning. But one of the places I'm really learning from now is the Americans. The American podcasts like Radiolab and Visibilia, they do things with sound that is sort of, it's off the scale. They're constantly innovating, and that's also incredibly inspiring. So I'm learning all the time.
With the industry growing as fast as it is, and us both, us all growing older as we are growing older, right? Why will
Thank
you
you for that
continue?
reminder.
Why will you continue to repeat this skill, Jayne? The skill in the midst of everything.
Well, because I am very fortunate and very sort of. I have a very open landscape in front of me here in South Africa. For various reasons, radio here is quite homogenous. You know, that it's either talk, which is a lot of phone-ins, or it's music. You know, there's a lot of reasons for that. Whereas now podcasting gives us a much greater scope to do more interesting things with sound, and to tell stories differently, and to create more built programs, and to do more creative stuff, because I feel that audio is fundamentally a creative medium. So I will continue to repeat it, because we are at an incredibly exciting stage here with podcasting in South Africa. It is just beginning to reach its tipping point. One of the other things I do in life is I train execs to do radio and television interviews, and every group I have, I ask them who listens to podcasts. Now, about even a year ago, people were sort of looking at me a little bit odd. But now I have yet to have a group this year who hasn't said, yes, we do listen. And some people are even saying, well, we only listen to podcasts, we don't listen to radio. So I'll continue to repeat it, because I've got a lot of scope here to try and get people to listen. It's really exciting to try and see your numbers going up with podcast downloads.
It is. Yeah. It's the podcasters thing, right? Like,
well, and just to add to that finally, is to a lot of people here have got into podcasting because they're listening to American stuff and UK stuff, because they think it sounds different, you know, and it does. I mean, because all those podcasts I was talking about earlier are incredible. So what I want to do is create stuff that is that great, but is coming from here in Africa, from South Africa, to tell South African stories, not to tell American or UK stories. We've got so many stories to tell.
Yeah, I think you're going to be great at that. I look forward to that.
Well, we'll see.
Excited. So where should we go to follow your story, or even to like connect with what you're doing? What's the best place for us?
Oh, thank you for asking. Well, I think probably the closest I've come to sort of making exactly the kind of podcast that I'm interested in is over the last year, I've been making a podcast called First Person with a journalist here called Marianne Tam, who's an amazing, she's an investigative journalist actually, but she's also one of those people that people talk to. And it's called First Person. You'll find it at www.firstpersonpod.com. And it is all about people who appear very ordinary, but have extraordinary stories to tell. And so we take you into those worlds and lift the neck curtain on their windows.
I love it. Well, tell me one other thing you've done consistently over the last 3 years, please.
Well, I suppose over the last 3 years, I've tried to do more and more of exactly what I've been talking about. And just on a completely different topic, the other thing that I do consistently is sing. So, but in terms of more serious stuff, the thing I've done consistently over the last 3 years is look for every opportunity I can to talk to people about podcasts, get people to listen to podcasts, convince them they want to pay me to make podcasts, and try and actually get a podcast sort of landscape happening here in South Africa.
Well, tell me about the singing. I like that.
Well, I actually, most people have that thing that they always really wanted to do. You know, we were all doing normal grown-up jobs, but there is that thing most people they wanted to be a soccer player or a gymnast or something. Well, I've always wanted to be a singer, and I've always done a lot of singing. And, I should have just actually gone for it, I think, when I was 16, but I didn't. I just thought I'll never make it, so I'll go and do something more grown up instead. But now I sing in 2 choirs here in Grahamstown, small a cappella choirs, and we're preparing for a big performance at the end of the year. So, yes.
How does it make you feel?
Oh, it is sublime. It is, without wanting to preempt one of your later questions, it is the closest I get to thinking that there might be some kind of higher power. Wow. Singing in small groups with other people is just the most wonderful thing, especially when you're doing it unaccompanied. It's very pure, and it's a very it is. I think it is the sort of sum total of my spiritual life. Really, it is incredibly uplifting, and singing with other people. It doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes it sounds terrible, but occasionally you get those moments where the whole becomes, greater than the sum of the parts, and it's wonderful.
Why would you suggest someone out there do what you've done? Specifically, the thing of that shelved dream, going after it.
Well, we're not talking about podcasting now, are we? Well, actually, there are two things. I mean, to be honest, when I was growing up, I had two things I wanted to do. One was to sing, and the other was to work for the BBC. And so I am sort of doing both of them. So I did one, and I'm still doing the other. I would suggest that people, if I had a chance to redo it, I would say, if there's one thing you like doing more than anything else, then do that. Because even if it doesn't work out, it's still nice to know that you gave it your best shot. And actually, the other thing I've learned is that most creative situations, whether it's singing or making podcasts or whatever it is, all depend on just grit. They depend on keeping on going and keeping on doing it. And I think when I was 16, I thought, well, I'm clearly not talented enough, but we know, and we've seen it a million times, that actually talent is a very small part of your success. So yeah, go for it and exercise grit.
Love it. Amazing audience. We're live here with Jayne Morgan. She is a podcast creator, writer, media trainer. Check her out. Jayne, I'll say quickly, I understood you didn't like pictures much when I looked at your homepage, right? And on it, there weren't many pictures. And then to your bio, your about page, right? It's like, well, I know you need a picture to the story, right? A face to the story, right? It sounded like, yeah, she's not a picture person. That's fascinating. I saw that it was JayneMorgan.co.za. Pretty intriguing stuff there. Well, let's switch gears for a moment now and let me invite you into my time machine that is surrounded with beautiful, warm, blue Caribbean water.
Oh.
What is it?
That's just such a lovely idea. Carry on.
What is your earliest childhood memory?
It's of my second birthday, and I remember sitting in a pushchair next to an old grey wood-burning stove in the kitchen of the farm where I grew up, and opening cards. And it is a very vivid memory, and it's one of the, I don't know how old one gets when you start having sort of continuous memories, but certainly you have these kind of snapshot memories. So yes, that's what I remember, opening my second birthday cards.
Wow.
So I know how old I was. Yeah. I preempted your next question.
It's okay. So you're two. Why do you think this memory is so clear?
Well, I think I do have extremely early childhood memories. I think remembering when you were two is quite young. And I think that was because there was quite a lot of trauma going on around me. And I think you tend to remember things when things are traumatic. My mother died when I was 11 months old, and I was brought up by my aunt on the farm that I was talking about. And I think the adults around me were quite stressed in my early years. So I think that's why I remember it. And yeah.
Well, can I offer an interpretation to the thought picture you created in my mind?
Please do.
I love the imagery of the fire burning that represents passion, and a passion that can only be fueled by what you feed it with. And that sits on one side. And then I love the picture of you opening something where you do not know what is in there. But at the same time, there's hope that it represents hope. And the fact that you are now doing something where you are fueling not only your passions, but the passions of so many other media producers in itself is fascinating, creating that place where other people can now open that envelope of hope as they listen to what goes on.
That was very impressive. A very impressive bit of interpretation. Free association. I like it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. If we fast forward to when you were 12, what was your favorite song?
The sad thing is that I actually knew this without even having to think about it, because I was obsessed with this song, and it used to make me cry, and I don't know why, but I mean, it was crying in a good way. It was "If You Leave Me Now" by Chicago.
Wow. Well, it all connects, right?
I suppose it does, doesn't it? I'm beginning to see myself as something of a tragic figure, but never mind.
All right, Jayne, we have arrived at our destination, but before we get off of this time machine, there's a small declaration form, so it's yes or no, possibly a bit more. Jayne, have you chosen someone to pass on your skills to?
Well, I do a lot of teaching at Rhodes University here in Grahamstown. I teach in the radio department. So I am trying to get as many students as I can excited about audio and to, get their ears working and get them to experiment with sound. So I teach students. And so, yes, as many people as I can, not one individual though.
Are you married?
I am.
And do you have children?
I do. I have two children who are now 14 and 16. A boy, my son, James, who's 16, and my daughter, Gemma, who's 14.
Do you believe in God?
I don't. And every time I say that, I have a little thrill of fear. But I don't. I'd love to, but I'm afraid not.
Do you have an inner circle of friends?
I do. I have some very, 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 very close friends. I was very sad because 3 years ago I lost my best friend in the world to cancer, but I do have a close circle of friends, yes, here and in the UK.
I'm sorry to hear that. Oh, what about TV? How do you watch TV films?
I do watch television. It is my way of escaping. It's the one time that I think I'm properly relaxed. So watching rubbish television is one of my greatest pleasures in life. In fact, my son came in to me the other day while I was watching a repeat of The Big Bang Theory and said, "You are apparently an intelligent woman. What are you doing?" This is what happens when you have teenagers. But in answer to the question, do I watch for more than 3 hours a day? I definitely don't. I would if I really, if you left me to my own devices and I didn't have to earn a living, but no, I don't.
What about screen time, the phone and or the computer?
I don't know. I've never added it up. I don't think it's more than 8 hours. I don't know though. Maybe, I don't know. If you add up the computer and the phone and the TV, maybe it is, but I don't want to think about that.
All right. I could do that. Well, Jayne, after 1,001 conversations in 2016, I came up with...
You're amazing.
Thank you. I came up with a workbook that's called Yours, and it stands for your own unique real self, your own unique real stance, and your own unique real statement. If you had to share with us a statement that represents Jayne Morgan, what would you say that is?
Ooh, well, I think that I have 3 mottos. In Sunday color supplements, you have these interviews with celebrities, and you get asked, what do you live by, like this. So I figured no one would ever ask me that. So I thought I would share it with you now. I have 3. They are: go big or go home, i.e., always do the difficult thing, always say yes, always do the thing you're most frightened of. Do as you would be done by. I reckon that if you think of every single thing you're about to do, every interaction you're about to have, if you think, how would I feel if that were the other way around, then you're probably going to not go far wrong. And finally, this too shall pass, which is, the fact is, no matter how bad things get, eventually you will come out the other side. So I reckon if you hang on to all 3 of those, then you'll probably be all right. And I do try and do that.
Wow, that's beautiful. Well, amazing audience. Jayne Morgan. Jayne, before you leave, is there anything else you'd like to share with our amazing audience?
It is an amazing audience, and it's. I think this project that you're doing is an excellent one, and I've really enjoyed being part of it. I think I've sort of had my say, except carry on listening. Go out, and if you're not someone who has explored the world of audio yet, go and do that, because there are some incredible things out there, and your ears will love you for it.
Jayne Morgan, thank you for being on What is Inspired by 12-Minute Convos with Angel Jones. Thank you for being on 12-Minute Convos with Angel Jones. Stay tuned for more from our advertisers.
Diabetes is a mountain pandemic. It's a disease that's not acute but chronic. Similar to this rhyming method, I have simplified the definition the signs and symptoms and the complications of diabetes for both adults and children in my books, Poems for Patients, A Focus on Diabetes, and The ABCs of Diabetes for Children. These books are available on Amazon.com, and for more information, you can visit my website, poemsbyaj.com. That's poemsbyaj.com.